Welcome everyone. Today I'll be talking about a data-driven, player-centric approach to evaluating spatial skill training games. So first of all, why spatial skills training? Well, spatial skills are a subset of cognitive skills that are crucial for success in STEM disciplines. Typically, students with low spatial skill will struggle in intro STEM courses, and they may eventually drop out of STEM majors thinking they're just not cut out for them, and then they're excluded from STEM careers. What can we do about this? Well, fortunately, spatial skills are very malleable, so we can train them and we can focus the interventions on those with the lowest level of spatial skill. And these interventions can be games. Certain video games have been empirically shown to be very effective at training spatial skills, while others have not, and it's not clear why. And without understanding why, we can't harness the potential of games to be effective spatial skill training interventions, and we can't design them effectively. Our research aims to fill this knowledge gap. We've designed Homeworld Bound Redux, a spatial skill training game that helps us understand what specific combinations of features may be contributing to a game's training effectiveness. It's divided into two modes, exploration mode and construction mode. In exploration mode, the player navigates a 3D environment in first person, searching for and collecting a series of parts that they can then take and use in construction mode to build items in 3D by rotating and lining up the parts. Our evaluation for Homeworld Bound, which I'll describe in this talk, was both player-centric and data-driven. We focused on the low spatial skill students as our target audience, and we evaluated training effectiveness and also players' enjoyment of the game. We also evaluated the link between students' pre-existing spatial skill and their performance level by level so that we could diagnose design problems where the game was not adequately tapping into players' spatial skill. We use this evaluation to inform our design recommendations. Our evaluation consisted of a controlled study of 490 students in a CS course for non-STEM majors. And the training interventions were the game, a series of more traditional spatial workbook exercises, and a programming lab that served as the control condition where students programmatically built simple shapes. The controlled training study lasted 3 weeks. In the first week, there was a pretest of spatial skills. In the second week, students were divided into their interventions, and they spent 70 minutes of a lab period playing their assigned intervention. Right afterward, they took the enjoyment subskill of the intrinsic motivation inventory, and a week later, they took a post-test of spatial skills and a demographic questionnaire. We found that low spatial skill students enjoyed Homeworld Bound Redux more than the traditional spatial exercises. But we found that there is no training effect for any condition beyond test-retest effects. For performance versus spatial skill associations, we conducted a series of linear regressions. We found that for the first 4 exploration mode levels, there was no significant relationship between performance and spatial skill, but for the first 4 construction mode levels, there were significant relationships, especially in the B2 and B3 levels. Why? Well, in these levels and in all construction mode levels, players need to line up, rotate and line up parts by lining up their green attachment regions shown in this figure. And what players may have been doing was, instead of mentally rotating the 3D objects themselves as we intended, they may have been mentally rotating these 2D attachment regions. So in the 2 levels where we didn't see any association between performance and spatial skill, B1 and B4, you'll note that these attachment regions are much simpler rectangles and triangles, whereas in B2 and B3, they're more complex asymmetrical objects, which may have done a better job at tapping into players' spatial skills in the mental rotation task. We have 3 design recommendations following on from these results. First, we recommend for tasks involving object manipulation, incorporate asymmetry into the objects and avoid adding embedded figures accidentally within larger shapes that are simpler to avoid giving players a mental shortcut. Design recommendations number 2 and 3 concern navigation tasks. We recommend using a combination of maps and time constraints for these. In our earlier exploration mode levels that we analyzed in this study, there were no maps or time constraints, unlike the later levels, and so players may have just simply wandered around randomly without a spatial strategy. This may be why we didn't see any correlation between performance and spatial skill. To avoid this, use a combination of maps and time constraints to incentivize map use and get players to strategically plan out the most efficient route through the environment to tap into their spatial skills. In conclusion, our recommendations can help game designers and researchers design more effective spatial skill training games, and we plan to continue improving and testing Homeworld Bound Redux, and we invite other researchers to do so as well using our code, which is available at GitHub. Thank you.